Hey tribe! So today we're going to be doing part 2 of my reading list for the Appalachian Trail. So I want to highlight one book in particular, and it's called Pack Light, A Journey to Find Myself by Shiletha Curtis. And I believe that this is one of one. I do not know of any black men or women who have hiked the trail and have written a book. So maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I absolutely enjoyed this book, and I just want to actually share with you all before I get started. I have read these books from cover to cover. It's hard for me to open a book and not complete it, even if I'm not enjoying the book. There's something about it that I have to finish it. So I've read these books from cover to cover. I'm going to give you a snippet because I would love for you to go out and purchase some of these books or go to the library. I went to the library and got a lot of these books. So let's get started. This particular book is a book by Shiletha Curtis, better known as Dragonsky on Trail. She's a black queer woman who decided in 2021 to hike the trail from Georgia to Maine, and she did complete the trail. Along the way, so this book is basically her paralleling her life with the trail. She dealt with a lot of mental health issues, and she speaks about those in this book. Believe for me that this book was key because she speaks specifically to the black experience. An amazing book. I do want to read a small snippet from her book. Now I knew that everything outside of the forest was an illusion, a fictional world where humans were like Sims being controlled by the confines of society, forced to acclimate to the civilization that was sucking their souls. I too had fallen victim to the curse, but it was time to break the spell. Hiking was my salvation, the forest, my church, and the mountains, my God. The peace allowed me to unlock my inner self. Walking through the doorways that had once been barricaded, it suddenly dawned on me that I was officially hiking the Appalachian Trail. The windows to heaven opened, and I saw eternity, a promise of life, twinkling in the perfect blackness. Next up, we're going to talk about, so I kind of coupled these books because they were similar in nature, but I'll go through them one by one. So Thru-Hiking the Appalachian Trail, 100 Tips, Tricks, and Facts. Jen Beck Seymour, Chica, and Greg Seymour, Sunset. So they also have a YouTube page. This was a great book. I mean, it's a breakdown of everything that you can think of on the Appalachian Trail. The shelters, the food, etiquette. One thing I picked up on this book that I gave some thought to was, they said, when you're thinking about your money and spending, maybe you go to your local bank and create just a separate checking account, so you can have your money separate. And that for me works. So I am going to be looking into that. So this was a great read. Now I coupled it with How to Hike the Appalachian Trail by Chris Cage, which is a very popular book. And it's actually one of the first books that I ran into in terms of being recommended. And so these two books, to me, I believe you could choose one or the other and you could get the same thing from this book, from these two books. Now with Chris Cage, he starts off and he goes through the different states. He talks about the elevation in the states. He talks about one of the things that highlights of that state. And then he goes into gear. He goes into daily routine. He goes into, all of what you would need, similar to 100 Tips and Tricks. Fun facts that he spoke about, which I knew that McAfee Knob was the most photographed spot on the Appalachian Trail, but I did not know, he says that the Lion King, this embellic rock, which he's talking about McAfee Knob, jets out like Pride Rock from the Lion King and is the cover of the movie, A Walk in the Woods. The trail continues to follow the beautiful limestone ledge into Tinker Cliffs and provides ever more views. So he has someone come in, a lady who's very knowledgeable about women's hygiene and, you know, menstrual cups and things that only women would need. And so I thought that was a really that was something very unique about Chris Cage's book. Next up is In Beauty May She Walk by Leslie Mass. So this was it was slow for me. It was a good book, but it was pretty slow in terms of how it progressed. And so Leslie Mass is a 60-year-old woman who decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now, she did end up doing a flip-flop, but she also stopped a few times, and while she was on trail, she actually met up with family. A lot of times family hiked with her. She introduced the younger guys to her son, and she ended up hiking with him for a while. But she also realized the difference between hiking with men and hiking with women. So that was one of the key points that I pulled out of the book was, you know, hiking with, these mosquitoes are going crazy out here. Hiking with a man, a lot of it is about, you know, competition and how many miles can you get in and can you get there before, you know, the other guys. And opposed to when she hiked with women, you know, she got more compassion, she got more love, and she just had a sisterhood. So she was able to at some point meet up with a couple women along the way. This in the early 2000s. So when 9/11 hit, she actually came off trail and took a minute to spend some time with her family and just kind of, she didn't feel like she didn't feel like being on the trail at that time was appropriate for her. So she went and spent time with family. The book did end with her summiting Springer Mountain, because she actually started, I believe, in Harper's Ferry, went to Katahdin, and then when she came back from her retreat from home, she started at the point where she stopped, and she actually got to Springer. So this is a great book for obviously people over 60. It wasn't in my bracket, but I still wanted to read it, and I did get quite a few pointers from her book. So this is In Beauty May She Walk. Next book we're going to review is Walking on the Wild Side, Long Distance Hiking on the Appalachian Trail by Christy Fondren. I saw this on someone else's channel. I said, let me check it out. It's a really short read. It is roughly about 140 pages, so it's a quick read. But this is a very interesting outlook and the way in which she wrote this book. So she's talking about the psychology of a person who decides to hike the Appalachian Trail, which I thought was interesting and really pulled me in on, okay, so what are the people like that hike the Appalachian Trail? And I do fit some of these traits. But she also talks about the subculture of the trail. And when I say that, I just mean, you know, trail names and trail magic. And, you know, even these trail names are like, you know, a different identity. You kind of take on a different person as you're on the trail. She talks a lot about the attributes of a person who decides to hike the Appalachian Trail. Thought this was very interesting. There's a chapter in here that talks about hiking your own hike, which is also a part of the subculture. It's the mainstay, one of the phrases that we use, or that you start to use when you hike the trail, which just means the way you would like to hike it is the right way. Hike it that way. Don't utilize or take on someone else's perspective so much so that you don't enjoy your journey on the Appalachian Trail. So great book for people who want to kind of get into the mind of a person who decides to hike the trail. It takes a level of discipline, and you know, there's just something, you know, possibly something innate about a person who decides to hike the Appalachian Trail. So, Walking on the Wild Side, thought this was a great book as well. As you can see, most of the books I'm reading, they're all new to me and they're all a different perspective. So, I just think they're pretty good books. Hiking Through by Paul Studsman. I do love this book. I will say I did really enjoy this book. This book, I would say, has a religious base to it. He grew up as a Mennonite, I believe. Very strict religion and upbringing. And his wife passed away from cancer pretty young. And this takes him on the Appalachian Trail. I believe he's about 60 when he, don't quote me, but I think he's around 50 or 60 when he decides to hike the Appalachian Trail. His kids are older at this point. On his journey, he meets a lot of other people that are hiking the trail for the same exact reason. As he's going on his journey, he's asking God to reveal his purpose and why he's there, what he needs to be doing. And every step of the way, he has faith, and God starts to open up the doors and show him, why he's there. And if you are not a person who is interested in the background of, because he sort of parallels the religion with the trail. If you're not a person that's like religious or into that and don't want to mix and mingle those two, then this may not be a good read for you. For those of you who are even spiritual, maybe you're not a Christian or Muslim or Mennonite, but you are a spiritual person, this is a great book. He went Nobo and he did summit Mount Katahdin. So really emotional story as well. There was some really sad moments, melancholy moments, and then there was obviously some adventurous moments. He was caught out in the rain a lot, which, is kind of a theme for people who hike the trail because it's going to rain some. AWOL on the Appalachian Trail. Amazing, amazing book. And his real name is David Miller. I call him AWOL because he went AWOL at work. He basically, midlife, quit his job and decided that he didn't want this mundane existence of getting up every day and just going to work. He wanted some spontaneity. So he decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. I do believe his brother, I know one of his family members had already hiked the trail, and he had a reference point for the hiking and the gear and things like that. So he went a more of a simplistic way of hiking the trail. He wasn't into all the name brands and things like that. He got what worked for him, and he used things that he already previously had. This book is not the romanticizing of the trail. This is a grit and grind book. He has an extreme amount of foot issues on the trail. He has sprained ankles. He has toenails fall off. I mean, everything that you can think of that will go wrong with your feet, he ended up with it. He also had to take some time away from the trail to kind of get his feet together. He went off trail to find some shoes. First couple times he was not very lucky to help his feet from the pain that he was going through. This is a great book of courage and resilience. He continues on even as he's dealing with the foot pain. And I love it because it starts out with his son. He has kids and a wife at home. So he's like middle age, and his son in the beginning, and I'm going to read that really quickly. His son, Jesse, in the beginning, just writes a really cute letter. It says, it's dated April 24th, 2003. And he says, it's 3:10 p.m. on a Thursday, and my two little sisters, my parents, and I are getting ready for one of the biggest days of our lives. My dad is going to hike the Appalachian Trail. Now you got to remember, he's a little kid, so I'm reading it as exactly how he wrote it. Now you might be thinking, so what?
But so what is for people who don't know what the Appalachian Trail actually is. So let me put it to you this way. It is a big trail. Still not impressed? Maybe you need more details. The Appalachian Trail is 2,172 miles long from Georgia to Maine. Well, that's all for now. Bye. So I thought that was cute that he started the book off with such a sentimental overlook. He does meet up, which I thought was also a wonderful thing, with his wife along the way, and they hike. The only thing is hikers know that you don't start off doing really big miles. You kind of ramp up. So when his wife came, they ended up doing 20 miles, and she was like in a lot of pain. He regretted the idea of having her come out on the first day and hike this trail that long. So they did stop the hiking, and they did end up enjoying themselves along the way. There's a pivotal moment in the book that he's at Kent and Hartford, and I'm just going to read it out the book. It says, the trail is a conduit, humming with memories from the miles behind me and electric with the possibilities still ahead. Despite my recent woes, I am certain that I will complete this hike. Short of a debilitating injury or a dire situation at home would cause me to quit before reaching Katahdin. My tendency is to stretch my days. Too often I'll pass up a side trail to a water or overlook. I set an arbitrary goal to reach the next milestone in in X number of days, racing to what is ahead at the expense of the present. I do not have an open timeline, but my restlessness is sure to move me along at a good clip. Completing the trail is a foregone conclusion, so I should feel free to enjoy myself. What I need to work on is a better balance of leisure time. And that is my favorite part of the book. One, because he recognizes that in this moment, it's time to take time to just enjoy and not plan so much of your day. Although hiking is a lot of work, I pulled from this part that I want to be out on trail and I want to take in the scenery. I want to be still. I want to be in the present moment. I want to be silent sometimes. This is the book for if you decide to read AWOL on the Appalachian Trail and you decide you still want to hike the trail, then the trail is for you. And I say that because it's nothing really pretty about this book. It's just like real talk here. So great book. Check it out. It's Bill Bryson, A Walk in the Woods, and I guess this is considered a classic. They have a movie on Netflix that is a sort of documentary, but not with the characters. I think Robert Redford and I forget who other Nick Nolte, they play in the movie. A hilarious book, but I also love the way he interwove into the book. He talks a lot about plant life. He talks a lot about the animals. And I thought, he talks about the idea that a lot of the trees, a lot of the plants they are extinct. They're not there anymore. And the animals that are no longer out in the back country. He talks about John Bartram, who is a botanist, and his son, who start to be entered into the forest to forage a lot of plants and use them for other things and selling them. And that became a trend. After that, thousands of botanists began to go out into the forest and do the same thing. And that caused, we don't have a lot of the wildlife about the animals that are no longer salamanders, different types of birds. I love how he interwove that into the book. Basically, this book is about Bill Bryson lives close to the trail. His home is close to the trail. One day he takes a walk, and as he's walking, he realizes, oh wow, I'm on the Appalachian Trail. He comes back home and he's doing a lot of research on the Appalachian Trail and decides, I want to hike the trail. I think he's like in his 60s, maybe late 60s. So he's like calling people. He's so excited. It's kind of like the feeling I know that you have when you decide you want to hike. You're so excited. You want to tell everybody. So he was calling around to find somebody who wanted to hike the trail with him. Now, not a lot of his friends were interested in hiking the trail. He does come across one of his long lost friends that he hasn't seen in a very long time, calls him from the message he leaves and says, hey, I'd love to hike the trail. Bill Bryson asks him, oh, hey, are you in shape? Are you, this is a huge feat. So is this something he's, oh yeah, absolutely. So when he sees cats, he's like, really? Like, he's heavy set, he's big, he smokes, he's kind of living a sedentary life. Well, they go out in the woods, and honestly, like, I didn't stop, I laughed throughout this book. And they ended up stopping. Actually, they got into, I believe, the Shenandoahs, and then they ended up calling it a done deal to some extent. They decide that, this is enough. We've done enough, and they go home. But they both agree that, hey, we've done enough, and we have hiked. Their whole idea was, we have hiked the Appalachian Trail. Like, regardless of what anybody said, we've docked in like 900 miles, and we're good with that. We've hiked it. So if you're looking for something to lift your spirits, even if you're not a hiker, this is a great book.
Last two are going to be our heavy hitters. And I call them heavy hitters because your mental game, to me, is top tier. Like, your mental game could be on and your physical game not be on, and you make your way to Katahdin. Two of my favorites, and I believe they're two of two. I don't know that there are any other two books about mental preparedness for the Appalachian Trail. So we're going to start with Appalachian Trials by Zach Davis, a psychological and emotional guide to successfully hiking the Appalachian Trail. Wonderful book. You to, before he even gets into the chapters, he wants you to first say, I'm through hiking the trail because when I successfully through hike the trail, I will. And if I drop out or give up on the trail, I will. And then he has wants you to publicly state your mission on this whole idea. And so that's kind of the foundation of the book. One of my favorite parts of the book is he gives you this statement which is, this too shall pass, right? We know that in life, nothing is constant, right? Only thing is constant is change. And so this too shall pass was that phrase that kind of stuck out for me. And I'm looking for tangible things that I could take from these books to take with me on trail. And that's definitely one of them. Another piece for me was when people talk about their pain, he talks about, you say, I am in pain. And he's asking you to reframe that and say, my leg is in pain. And so when you reframe it, it's not that you are connected to the pain. Your whole self is connected to the pain, but you just identify that one piece. And that was really important for me, really beneficial for me. So Appalachian Trials by Zach Davis. I just wanted to give you a snippet of that. Last but not least, the last book on mental preparedness is Pushing North by Trey Free. He goes by Early Riser, and he also has a YouTube channel. Now, just like Appalachian Trials, Pushing North, he also gives you a phrase in here, and it is, I get to. Not I have to, right? I get to. And so it changes your perspective on what it is that you have to do. You don't have to, but I get to. It's my privilege to. He uses the elephant and the rider as an analogy moving through the book. So the elephant is your emotional self, and the rider is your rational self. And your rider always wants to solve, something. So they're always looking for something to solve. And he utilizes this analogy throughout the book, which actually helps me to kind of grasp some of these concepts that he has. Also, one of the big things in both of the books, and something that I practice in my daily life, is gratitude. It's hard to be grateful and like sad and mad at the same time. If you can do it, I'm just saying, right? A level of gratitude that, wow, you know what I mean? Just this amazing trek that you are able to embark on. And so gratitude was big in both of the books. Things that I like about Pushing North. One of the ways where he, in the morning, he gets up and gets going is he releases the air from his air mattress. Okay, I could definitely see myself doing that as a, making sure I get up and get out. Chapter on the danger of expectations and setting expectations of what we think is going to be. I think with these two books, when you study people like Neville Goddard and Reverend Ike and Joe Dispenza, you recognize that a lot of what the torture and torment that we go through is up here. We create those things ourselves. I hope you guys enjoyed this last reading list. Love and Hike.